Hello and welcome to Trash to Track. In this episode, we're going to be looking at a couple of TriAng DMU models that have been sent in to me by a chap called Pete. And Pete says that they're not the best of runners. So, like I said, I've got two 3-car units to have a look at, although there's bits of fluff falling off them already. Although only one of the coaches has got the drive unit in it. So we'll give this a battery test, or in this case a controller test, to see what's occurring with it. And it appears not to be a very good runner. It's actually quite stoppy-starty. So I'm going to strip this down and we're going to have a look at what's going on inside this model. But like I said, he actually sent me two of these units. So I'm going to do a rail test with this other one that's in this box and see what's going on with this one. Apart from the odd fluff, this one looks to be in marginally better condition cosmetically. And also when power is applied, this one actually turns out to be quite a nice smooth runner, at least on this Trash to Track test track at least. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the first model that was running very jolty, and we'll see what's going on the inside of this model. So first off, I'm going to remove this screw in the roof of the DMU here. And this holds the roof on and should allow access to the motor bogie, although to my surprise there's actually a bulb in the front which is wired through to the motor. I wasn't expecting that, as I was unaware that these models came with working light. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to remove this screw here that holds the motor bogie in place, put that in my magnetic tray, and then I'm going to have to try and work on this motor bogie without unsoldering any of the wires. It just creates extra work, and I'm hoping I'll be able to access all I need to without unsoldering anything this time round. So I'm going to remove the base plate and see what's going on with the wheels, and I'm going to give the pickups a thorough clean. Although removing the base plate shows there's actually a lot of dried grease and grime in here, and the wheels are actually stuck in the bogie casting there, and I have to pull them out with this long nose pliers. You can see here just how much grease and old oil was accumulated on these over the years. This other wheel is the same, so using these tweezer nose pliers, I'm just going to grab the wheel and gently pull it out of the frame, although they were stuck solid with this sticky, horrible old grease. So I actually had to get some pliers with teeth on them, a serrated edge, just to pull the wheels out. No wonder it wasn't running properly, as all this dried on grease would have put a lot of extra strain on the motor. Well, you can see there just how much rubbish has come out of that axle hole. So I'm now going to just put some power directly to the brush terminals, and the motor actually spins rather nicely. And at the top corner there, you can see that the bulb actually lit up, so the bulb is working on this model. So using my tweezer nose pliers, I'm just releasing the spring to allow the brushes to come out of the way. And then I'm going to clean the commutator. I'm going to polish it up with my fiberglass pencil, and then give it a polish up with a cotton bud soaked in methylated spirits. And I'm also going to clean the gaps in the commutator, as any carbon buildup between the brass plates will cause the model to short circuit, and could also lead to the coils overheating and the motor failing completely. So if you've a regular viewer, you've seen me do this now lots of times, but for those new, I shave a cocktail stick down, just put it in between the gaps in the commutator there, just to remove any of the built up carbon. People have asked where I can get these fiberglass pencils from. I bought mine from at the Expo tool stand at the local model shop, but you can also get them from Amazon, and they're relatively cheap. Just be careful not to get any of the broken fibres into your skin, as they are extremely painful for something that is so tiny. So now I'm turn the motor bogie upside down, and just look at the amount of grease and crap that comes off these axle holes. That cotton bud has gone black already, and I've not even properly started to clean it yet. So dipping the cotton bud in methylated spirits allows me just to remove all the old built up grease and grime, and get rid of all the foreign contaminants that shouldn't be in this drive bogie. it does take a lot of work, and I was working on this for about 25 minutes before I was actually satisfied with how clean it was. I also give both of the axles a thorough cleaning with cotton bud and meths. Again, as you can see, there's a lot of old grease on the axles from where they've been sat in that motor bogie for years. This really does need a proper clean, as this will aid in electrical conductivity onto the pickup plate that we're going to clean up as well. So just running the cotton bud around the wheel backs. I also polished the wheel backs with the fiberglass pencil, although I actually didn't film that bit. But you can just see on the cotton buds I'm going through just how mucky and dirty this drive on this TriAng DMU is. And it makes me wonder how long it's been since this was actually taken apart and serviced. I'm also going to wipe all the grease and oil off the wheel surfaces there, off the wheel faces, as they were quite dirty as well. So now that's all done, and I'm satisfied with how clean these wheels and that have actually turned up, I'm going to start rebuilding the motor bogie. And the first thing I do is clean the brushes up to remove any of the excess carbon deposits that are on there. And it just ensures good electrical conductivity between the brushes and the commutator faceplate. The brushes themselves weren't in too bad a condition, and it doesn't look like the model has had much use over the years. And this model is probably pushing 45 to 50 years old now. Using my needle nose pliers, I just reinsert the brush there, using the spring on one side to hold it in place. That's when I can get it in. I actually resort to using these grippy pliers again, because the needle nose pliers were just too smooth and the brush kept falling out of them. But once one's in the line, the spring will hold it in place and just ensure that the brush carbon is in contact with the commutator. And then when I'm not shorting it out, I put the power lead onto it, and actually the motor is running really nice and smoothly now. One thing I'm also going to do is I'm going to fill up the brass bearings on the end there with a little bit of oil, just so that spreads through, and make sure that the worm gear is correctly oiled. I've actually missed a bit of muck there. Look, even though I spent all that time cleaning it, there was still a little bit of grease inside that wheel aperture. So I'm now going to put the wheels back in place. They slot in nicely, and they're a lot more free running than they were before. As like you've just seen before, we needed to actually use pliers to remove them. Put the pickup wire, just bend that back into place. I'm just going to put a tiny amount of lubrication on the axles there, as we've removed all of the old stuff. But this fresh oil will ensure that the metal axles on the metal bearings won't wear out too quickly. So once that's done, the chassis keeper plate is then screwed back into place. And then once that's all in place, I'm going to put a small amount, and I mean a very small amount, of silicone grease onto the worm gear, followed by a little bit of oil. Because like I said before, these are metal parts, and metal on metal will wear out quickly if there's no lubrication on them. So I'm just putting some oil on the worm gears there. And then a tiny bit of this silicone grease with a cocktail stick, and that was spread into the gear teeth, and then gently run in to spread it around the drivetrain. So the model's now upside down, and I'm going to clean the wheels. I put the power onto a screw and onto the wheel, and initially I used the track rubber just to polish the wheel faces up, as this seemed to do a better job of polishing the wheel faces than my fiberglass pencil alone. And once that was done, I removed any of the excess fibres and that were left over on the wheels with a cotton bud and methylated spirits. And you can see in this view just how shiny I've got those wheels to be now. That just proves how oxidised they were, and that would have contributed to the very poor running of this model at the start of the video. So now that the motor's been completely serviced on this unit, I'm going to put it back onto the test track to see if it's made a difference in the running quality. So applying some power, you can see there that this unit now actually runs really, really nicely. And it has maintained that TriAng growl that is so familiar with these units of this age. So I took the bulb back in the front there and refit the roof, and then just gently tighten the screw in the roof. It's imperative that you don't over tighten this screw, as over tightening it you could end up cracking the roof plastic and then you've ruined your model. So just make sure it's sitting flush there, and this unit's virtually done. The one thing I did do on all of the coaches for all of the units was to clean up the plastic wheels, and as you can see here on that cotton bud, there was a lot of the carbon build-up through years of use. So it was initially scraped off with a small flat-bladed screwdriver, and then the rest was polished up with the fiberglass pencil and a methylated spirit soaked cotton bud, just to ensure that when this model's running it's not spreading any carbon onto your track, creating dirty track and you a big job in the future. Just going to give it a final dust off there, and this unit is virtually done. This is the centre car of one of the units. I'm just demonstrating here how I scrape off the muck with a tiny flat bladed screwdriver just by rotating the wheels, and then all that carbon deposit you can see there has come off the wheels, and you'll see on this piece of kitchen roll just how much rubbish comes off one set of wheels alone. You really don't want this spread over your layout. So this is the second unit now, which was the better of the two runners, and I wasn't really going to do a lot to this. This is a later model with a Phillips screw in it, and I was just going to re-lubricate it and clean off any excess lubrication from before and any old lubrication. But when I removed the chassis keeper plate of this model, it became apparent that there was a problem with one of the wheels, and it had actually separated from the axle. I'm not sure why, but it obviously didn't impede its running, but the actual bushing had come away from the wheel. I didn't have any spare parts, and I found them difficult to find online for this particular model. So cleaning up the excess, I actually refit this wheel to the axle with a tiny amount of Loctite superglue. And after 2 or 3 hours of thorough running in on a rolling road after the rebuild, the wheel didn't show any signs of weakening and was actually a very good runner still. I've never come across a model which has actually worn its own bushing away before. So here I am just putting a tiny amount of that Loctite onto the grooves on the axle, and the wheel was pressed in place, and then it was gauged with my digital calipers before the glue set to ensure the back-to-back setting was correct. And like I said, once it was dry, it was refitted to the model, and the model was given a thorough running in on my rolling road before sending back to Pete, just to ensure that that super glue had held and the wheel wasn't going to come off again. Again, like the other unit we did, the all the wheels were thoroughly cleaned, but then it comes on the dummy unit on this has actually got a light fitting as well, and it's actually this pickup wire has come loose. So I actually stripped that off and resoldered that to the brass part in the bogie, and I replaced the wire with some purple wire, as you can see there, because the white wire that TriAng supplied just wasn't long enough to resolder. The pickups were cleaned first with a fiberglass pencil to polish the brass up, and then they were polished with some methylated spirits and a cotton bud, and then the wheel treads on this dummy unit were cleaned to ensure good electrical conductivity for the light in the dummy power car. As you can see here in this test, I don't know how well it will show up, but under power the bulb actually works in the end of that unit. So laying all of Pete's units out on my work desk, you can actually see that that one there is an interloper. We've got 3 units with the half yellow ends and an older coach from a full green model. But they've all been rebuilt and they're all running rather nicely now around my son's layout. If you've got a loco you'd like to see featured on a future episode of Trash to Track, please email me on the email address you can see on screen now, and we'll have a look at getting it sent over, and who knows, it may feature in a Trash to Track episode all of its own. Thank you so much for watching Trash to Track again. Please like, share and subscribe, and I'll catch you again in the next video. Bye for now. can actually hold it if you look closely.